Am I the asshole for turning a guy down because he is short? I was at a bookstore last week, and I ended chatting with a guy, and he was nice and cute, and asked for my number, and even though I'm like 2-3 inches taller than him, I gave it to him. We're both 22, I'm like 5'8", he's maybe 5'5". We spoke on and off for a week, and he asked me to a bar. I had no plans, and so I agreed, and it was a good time, he's a nice guy. But the more I was thinking about it during the date, the more I thought to myself that it won't work out, because he's a lot shorter than me. I still enjoyed the date, and he paid our tab. After that we were speaking, and he mentioned we should go to this cool other bar next time. And I just said I wasn't feeling anything between us. He was kinda bummed, but said, any particular reason? So I just told him, I don't really like shorter guys. And he surprisingly took it very well. He said, no problem, I get it. Thanks for the honesty. And we hugged and went on our ways. I told one of my friends who's a guy, and not short, he's like average height. And he said that was super vain and shallow, as the way I was describing him, he was a nice guy, and he can control his height. However, my girlfriends think I was well in my right, and that it's a deal breaker for them too, and I'm not an ass. Am I the asshole? So, I'm wondering about the thought process here. See, in the beginning she called this guy nice and cute. And maybe I'm seeing too much into regular words, but to me cute implies a certain level of attraction. But then she sort of talked herself out of it, and I wonder how much of it is about the optics. Like, how do we look together, how do I look beside him, that kind of stuff. And it's a shame if you miss out on good things because of how you will look, or because of what society tells you about beauty and manliness. You might genuinely think that this preference of I want my man to be bigger and stronger than me is just your preference, but I think it's heavily influenced by societal standards. But being influenced is not a crime, and doesn't make you the asshole. Does changing your mind makes you the asshole? Surely not. Just because you gave him your number doesn't mean you have to sleep with him or date him. I'm sure someone in the comments will be butthurt because he paid, but I don't see the problem with that unless OP went overboard knowing she wouldn't have to pay. Now to the main question. Is she the asshole for being honest? Let's see. She wasn't rude. She didn't insult him. She just answered his question. So not the asshole in my opinion. But of course it's easy to say in hindsight, because his reaction was so mature. It definitely could have backfired. I know it's a sore spot for many guys, and many of them feel very jaded about their chances of finding a partner because so many girls prefer tall guys. For someone like that, this honesty would have been another confirmation they're never gonna find love, gonna die alone, which is very depressing and damaging. But then again, is it an OP? You have a self-esteem problem, go to therapy. You have a thinking problem, cause, several girls not liking your height, or even thousands of girls on the internet not liking your height, doesn't equal everyone in the world not liking your height. It's a cognitive distortion, go to therapy. As for this guy, judging from his reaction, he knows he's short, and he's processed it in a healthy way. If anything, maybe someone being honest about it gives him closure. Like, this girl doesn't like my height, hey, I can do nothing about it. Let's just move on. She's not my person. Now, what if instead of height it was about weight? Or genders were reversed and the guy was like, I'm not gonna date you because you have small tits. Well, I guess this is when you lie, if you want to look like a decent human. I don't know if these are genuinely different situations or if I have double standards, but to me, these two examples somehow sound much worse. Incredibly rude. While I don't like shorter guys is acceptable. Tell me if I'm wrong. In fact, I tried to discuss it with my sister and she disagreed with me to the point where I really question myself. She rejects the whole idea of rejecting someone based on physical traits. Maybe I am shallow, but I'm also demisexual, so the latter sort of overrides the former. I've fallen in love with some guys I initially found very unattractive, and maybe this girl also would have changed her mind again if she stayed in contact with the guy. Anyway, according to me, OP is not the asshole. Reddit disagrees. Let me guess. If you don't give a short guy a chance because he's short, you're a bitch. But if you do, and it doesn't work out for you, you were leading him on. Yep. Top comment. You are the asshole for letting him take you on the date and pick up the tab before you turned him down. It's not like his height changed between the time he met you and the time you called it off. Yeah, it's not like you can change your mind or anything. You should have known right away! Even if you are just 22 and have not entirely figured out your preferences. Another one. You already have this preference, so shouldn't have agreed to the date, as it wasn't going to change anything. Well, maybe she thought it would. She was wrong. That doesn't make her the asshole. Finally, a voice of reason appears. Not the asshole. As a guy, I can see both sides though. It's hard to be rejected for something you can't control, but at the same time, you are under no obligation to be with anyone. I think it's just ever so slightly shallow to reject a guy solely because of height, but at the same time, your preference is totally your preference. I feel like that doesn't make sense, but I can't really put it any better. It's not evil to be a little shallow. My thoughts exactly. Another comment that defends OP. No assholes here. The guy clearly understood. If you aren't comfortable with short guys, that's your decision. As much as a taller guy might think you're too tall for them, and they may prefer shorter girls. You can't change your preferences on that. Of course, there are those who say, well, he can't help his height, but he also can't help your thoughts on it either. I actually think you can change your thoughts, but you don't owe it to anyone. Then there's an argument about OP using the guy to pay for her, and her agreeing to go out with him in the first place, knowing he's short. This same commenter continues to defend OP. At first she thought it wouldn't be an issue, but then realized as the date went on that it would in fact be an issue. You don't know till you try. Also, it's pretty normal for a guy to pick up the bill on the first date, whether they know there is going to be a second date or not. Yeah, like if it was a huge bill and she insisted that he pays, or actively misled him into thinking there would be a second date, then she would be the asshole. But we don't know if anything like that happened. Maybe he was like, I'm a guy, let me pay, let me treat you. And if he expected something in return, that would make him an asshole, you know. Another subset of commenters insists she shouldn't have been honest. You're the asshole. It's certainly within your rights not to date him, but telling him the reason for it was an unkind thing to do, even if he ended up taking it well. A lot of short guys are insecure about their height and likely have been rejected before because of it. You could have simply said you didn't feel a spark. Okay, that's kinda what she did say, except he asked for a particular reason. Instead, you told him it was due to something that he can't change and has no control over, his height. I'd say the general rule of thumb for not being an asshole is to avoid making people feel bad for something about themselves that they can't change, be it height, weight, or intellectual ability. Okay, I kinda agree with the rule of thumb. The thing is, he asked, and he was ready to hear the answer. If he asked while not being ready, well, that kinda would have been on him. Like, personally, I feel bad about my looks. And if someone tells me they don't feel a spark with me, I'll get the hint. I won't ask for more details, for God's sake. So, no, I don't blame OP for answering a question.